The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. Wellness Education Cannabis Advocates of Nevada present the We Can 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with the We Can radio team. For the next 60 minutes, we'll take an in-depth look at the cannabis reform revolution sweeping the nation. Now, let's fire up the news hour. Here is the We Can radio team.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Weekend 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour. I'm your host, Mike McAuliffe, and with me in the studio, of course, is my co-host and friend, Perry Heichu. How you doing today, Perry?
Very, very well. It's good to be back.
Good to be back, yes. Are you, you can see well? The sun didn't blind you in your visit to Portland for the eclipse?
No, I was in the path of totality, so you did not need to have the glasses to observe it under the full spectrum. It was spectacular. If any of you viewing have the opportunity to witness a solar eclipse in the path of totality at any point in your life, I would highly recommend it, but do your diligence and check the weather first. Some of my friends on the East Coast were not treated to such a lovely show as I was. So just wonderful. Quite a spectacle, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we are with another week, more news that never seems to stop in the cannabis industry as it keeps growing here in the U.S. and beyond. Locally, we've got an article here from the RJ written by Carlton Lockhead with a dateline just yesterday, August 29th. And the article is entitled, Nevada Tax Commission Says No to Liquor Distribution in Marijuana Fight. And the tax commissioners voted this week to uphold a determination by the Nevada Tax Department that there are not enough licensed liquor distributors to properly serve the state's recreational market. And the alcohol distributors have been fighting for months to gain a monopoly on the commercial marijuana deliveries for the first 18 months. And those distributors argue that such a monopoly was given to them by the recreational marijuana legalization law voters approved in Nevada. And indeed, that did happen, with the caveat that if there is enough supply of liquor distributors to get into this business.
Oh, I just don't think I took it seriously enough. I used to think that they were like, I used to have the idea in my head that the liquor distribution companies were kind of maliciously trying to keep the industry down, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I just think that they were kind of dragging their feet and thought that the good old boys would protect them, and they played their cards just a little bit wrong this time. I don't think they're going to get shut out. They're just not going to have the monopoly that they wanted, or that, honestly, that they kind of, I don't want to say deserved, but had coming to them. Well,
we've talked about this on the show in past episodes, where the group that is now has been suing and trying to get the ability to do these and block other people are not the original group who signed on, the original group of liquor distributors who signed on.
It's an opportunity that they saw they could take advantage of, and they wanted to push as hard as they could and make their play. They made their play. It didn't work out. Now they'll try another one, try another move, and try to just fall into the fold, hopefully. And I don't want to say we'll just see how this works out, because I'm more interested to see who steps up instead.
Well, it seems to be that the local MMEs are the ones who are stepping up to be able to do their own internal deliveries, especially the wholesalers. But that hasn't been ruled upon if that's really going to go down yet, isn't it? It's still kind of in limbo. Yes, and it's in limbo because this fight is going on through the courts and through the tax commission to determine which way is going to move forward. There really is not a resolution on this, and as I do research for the show week after week and we talk about this, I find that if I'm doing my story layout 3 or 4 days before the broadcast, and then I come back on the morning of the broadcast, I have to pull a couple of stories out because this particular story is changing,
developing it's in flux.
Absolutely it is. I like one line here from Kevin Benson, who's an attorney for a group of alcohol distributors at this meeting. He said afterwards, there was no opportunity to question anything being presented in the meeting. There was no way to get to the bottom of any of those things. And
sounds familiar.
Yeah, my heart goes out to Councillor Benson here, because he's finding exactly what all of us activists in the movement found for the last 10 or 12 years, that the people in authority had their own agendas, they had their own ideas, and they didn't want outside input. Even though they would proclaim not to know a lot about this, they knew how they wanted to keep it inside a tight box.
Very, very true. One mind at a time. Try not to go at them as a broad base. Try to get them individually and get those votes, because if you just go in front of the board and try to make your case, you're going nowhere.
Yeah, you know, currently, according to the article, there are 6 marijuana distributors who are licensed in Nevada, you know, for the entire state.
That's
these
unreal.
companies have 29 transport vehicles. And you might say, you know, in a state like Nevada, where we're only 3 million people and all, that 30 vehicles roughly would be enough to cover the state. But we're also the seventh largest state in the country in square mileage. So this really isn't all that much, and there's a lot of in-between driving there.
No, it isn't. As I start to think of the time of transport it takes, like if I'm a producer here in Southern Nevada and I have clients maybe in the Reno, Sparks, Carson City area, and I have to make those runs once a week, that's minimum. If you're driving the speed limit, which you should be, an 8 to 9 hour drive if traffic is good.
So it's 2 working days.
It's easily 2 working days just to go back and forth. So when you're talking about how between all of these people there's only 29 trucks to, you know, with all these various jurisdictions, I mean, Pahrump, Mesquite, Laughlin, you know, Carson City, etc. I don't believe
Up to Washoe or down from Reno.
Yeah, I don't believe that many of the eastern counties have adopted regulations concerning distribution yet. Like,
no, in fact, most of the cow counties have.
Right, but when like
counties.
West Wendover and places like that have indicated that they would like to have a recreational dispensary, which will even exacerbate this problem even further. But like you said, there's a lot of people just waiting, just salivating over the opportunity to try to get this going on.
And of course, the people in West Wendover are especially interested in this because West Wendover is exactly on the border with Utah, and of course then there's Wendover, which is in Utah.
Sure.
So the people who want to open up the rec dispensaries in West Wendover, I think, are counting on some spillover coming across the border.
Oh, of course.
That's the only state border they're close to.
Well, that's been a traditional business model of Nevada and our competitive states for decades, forever, since I can remember. I mean, I've talked about it on this show. I can't even tell you how many times. But as we look to all of our borders as Nevadans, we look to the California border. The #1 Lotto Powerball sales point in the country is Prim, California. Yeah. Absolutely. It shows the massive market that Nevadans have to want to cash in on those potential jackpots, just like everyone else.
I am not a fan of playing lotteries. I think that it's an awful investment. The odds of winning are absolutely terrible. That said, when the Powerball went to 650, 700 million last week, my wife unveiled on me to take some time. We rode down there, and she stood online for an hour and a half to get those tickets.
Yeah,
and it's amazing how many people of so many, you know, different persuasions were standing on that line. Although if I had to guess, I would say most of those people on that line are middle class or lower middle class. I wouldn't say that I saw a lot of, you know, fancy cars and stuff.
No, that's always the argument too, is that the lottery takes the money out of the pockets for people who want to depend on it the most, you know. But yeah, still, you look at Arizona, you know, the Arizona border down in Laughlin, you have Rosie's Den across the way that sells lottery tickets, and then on the Nevada side of the border, there are a dozen high-rise casinos on the, you know, Nevada side of the Colorado River, and none so on the Arizona side.
Somebody's trying to open up an MME down in Laughlin area, and once again, they're going to be looking at taking.
Oh yeah, well they have one. They're looking for
that Bullhead City cross.
No doubt about it, as they should in the Calnev area. I mean, there's a lot of potential. The airport just recently started taking American Airlines flights for the first time in a long time down there. You know, Jesus, if you look up north, there's a lot of casinos on the Lake Tahoe side and not on the California side.
Sure.
You know, I mean, we've been playing this game for decades, so if someone's going to say this is dirty pool, it's just not a fair assumption. So I I hope they get what they're looking for out there, and I hope they make a ton of money because there's a good market up there.
They sure should. Also happening here in Nevada this week, and this story comes from Thomas Moore over at the Las Vegas Sun. Nevada regulators reaffirm stance that pot and gaming don't mix. And in our last show, we were talking about the Gaming Commission and their chair, Tony Alamo, who is very, ain't never going to happen here. And the article by Mr. Moore starts that when it comes to recreational marijuana here, the message from the Nevada Gaming Commission to casino companies is clear. Stay away from the newly legal industry, whether it's pot use by customers or business relationships with the weed industry.
Keep those kids from skateboarding on the sidewalks, too.
Oh, keep those kids out of trouble there. We'll see. And so Tony Alamo, who I just mentioned, who's the chairman of the Gaming Commission, said that I've stated the following, that marijuana is a Schedule I drug, making it illegal under federal law. And because of that, the commission can't allow licenses to knowingly, within their sidewalks, knowingly break federal law.
Sure they can. They don't care. The federal government doesn't have any oversight concerning that. One. Two, it's a bunch of complete nonsense.
Well, your family history gives you a lot of insight into the gaming industry.
I think that there's a lot of comparisons between the gaming industry and the cannabis industry that are being ignored by the powers that be within the gaming industry. Gaming was looked down upon, and even is still looked down upon in a lot of conservative parts of the country, as an evil vice, something that should be stomped out, illegalized, etc. It's immoral, and it takes some money away from good, hardworking people, and it's addictive, and there's a lot of bad stigma that goes along with cannabis,
which to them makes Nevada the triple axis of evil.
Absolutely,
with,
you better believe
gambling, drugs, and
prostitution. Absolutely, you better believe it. It's very, very disheartening for me to see people who have risen above that stigma to create this industry that gives so much good paying jobs without a good education. I mean, Nevada has been the pinnacle of what I would consider the American dream for a long time. I mean, people have always looked to Vegas for opportunity, and for them to stomp out this new burgeoning industry that has so many similarities just kind of spits in the face of American capitalism, in my opinion. And the fact that a lot of these casino companies go out of their way to donate money against legalization when they haven't given many of their employees raises in so many years really shows where their priorities are. And Nevada regulators reaffirm stance that pot and gaming don't mix. Well, people who smoke pot don't care.
Right.
Like,
and that is the big threat to the gaming industry. As we've talked on the show in previous episodes, when people get drunk, when they have alcohol, of course, if they're visibly drunk, the casinos are supposed to stop them from gambling anymore. Like, that happens a lot. All right, but the idea there that that when people are drinking alcohol, they get loose. They'll get loose on the slot machine. They'll get loose on their bets on the tables and whatever. But when people are under the influence of cannabis, they tend to sit back a little bit more and not be so quick to pull that lever.
Well, we don't know because we've never done any demographic research. The Gaming Commission and the various powers that be have never given us the authority as slot managers, table games managers, hotel managers, etc.
Because they don't even want to admit that that cannabis consumption is happening.
Yeah, that's right,
properties.
Which is nonsense. We should have some serious studies about this. What does cannabis do for the floor? How does it affect the drop? How does it affect this, that, and the other? What do our non-smoking customers think about this?
Right.
How do we address these issues for both parties? How do we embrace this new all-cash business who wants to come and throw their money around without alienating our pre-existing customer base? No one's asking those questions, and that's what, in my opinion, the Gaming Commission is supposed to be, not a hindrance to the gaming industry or a morality. They're not supposed to propose moral guidelines. They're just supposed to say, how can we build business?
I think part of it is that the gaming industry largely self-regulates in an attempt to prevent the federal government from coming in and doing onerous regulation. This is true. As the government did a few years ago when they banned online poker.
Right. Okay.
So the industry is saying we don't want to give the federal government an excuse to come in here, and I can understand that aspect of it.
The gaming industry is so huge now. They have their own lobbyists. They are a real force nationwide. And it's just such a cop-out. They're like, oh, well, they're going to come in and shut us down. No, they're not. They're not going to do anything.
They're not going to do
They're not going to do anything. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's just a way for them to tuck their tail between their legs.
Yes. And hold on to their conservative
but once again,
values.
all this does is it gives people who want to do it the right way have no recourse now. And people who don't care are going to continue to give them the finger and say, you know what, we're going to smoke a blunt on the casino floor, and I don't care if I get 86, somebody will go across the street.
Well, yeah, there you go. And there's another commissioner on this on the Nevada Gaming Commission, John T. Moran Jr. He also agreed that pot and gaming shouldn't mix, but he had a different reason, and he cited NRS 453D, which is the Nevada law, which of course legalized cannabis for recreational use. And he said that law, not federal guidance, but that state law is the one that should really guide the casino's operating principles. And he says that anyone using marijuana in a public place is guilty of a misdemeanor under the law.
Technically, casinos are private property, so we can get into the technicalities.
But it's a public space because their doors are open to the public, and you don't need a special invite to come in. So they're just like a Kmart would be considered a public place because they're inviting people in. That's the nature of their business. And so the parameters and goalposts have been established by the state, making public consumption a misdemeanor, and he said we can't move them one way or the other. And he said that makes it pretty clear it's not going to be allowed in a public place until the law gets changed or doesn't get changed. So I can't fault his logic on that. One would hope that there's a way to move forward, but the county has been really clear in the past couple of months that they are not going to move forward on public consumption or social lounges or anything like this without state oversight. So at this meeting, Chairman Alamo pointedly said that the commission is not going to commit or create detailed rules regarding pot, even though one of their board members have asked them to do so. And so this is an issue that is going to keep moving forward in fits and starts, but it really needs to be addressed from a higher level. If the federal government reschedule, I think this whole problem with the gaming commission goes right away.
Not going to happen in the current Congress.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen real soon.
No freaking way.
Anyway, what is going to happen real soon is a quick commercial break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
My name is Janine Evans, and I am the office manager at Getting Legal, and we help people get their medical marijuana cards. Anyone can be approved for a medical marijuana card as long as they have a pre-existing medical condition. The medical conditions recognized in Nevada include severe pain, severe nausea, muscle spasms, seizures, glaucoma, cancer, HIV or AIDS, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Our staff helps every patient determine before they come in for a visit whether or not they will qualify. We take care of the whole process of getting a medical marijuana card from the state of Nevada from start to finish. Our services include paperwork processing, a physician's visit, notary services. All of our patients pick up their approval letters right here in our office. We make it fast, simple, and easy. During your consultation, we will discuss different products available at the dispensaries, such as edibles, lotions, and concentrates. We will also discuss different ways to medicate, such as smoking or vaporizing. You will receive a separate identification card identifying you as a medical marijuana patient. This is used to enter the dispensaries and only to enter the dispensaries. Every veteran receives a discount off of the full price of their card. We also offer discounts to anyone working within the medical marijuana industry. All you need to do is call 702-979-9999 and a member of our friendly staff will help you schedule an appointment.
And welcome back to the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. Moving on to neighboring states here. We've been covering a story since January, essentially, about Attorney General Jeff Sessions' newly revamped war on pot that seems to be gearing up, and various developments that have been happening in that area. We spoke a couple of shows back about letters that the Attorney General was sending out to the governors of different states, including Washington, Colorado, Colorado, Oregon over their legalization efforts. And we have part of a response from Oregon's governor, Kate Brown, and their state police superintendent, Terry Hampton, in letters back to the Attorney General. And Governor Brown wrote that despite the concerns surrounding legalization of marijuana, there can be no denying that Oregon has benefited from this industry. Oregon has already realized $60.2 million in revenue and created over 16,000 jobs for Oregonians. Tax revenue from the marijuana industry is used to fund schools, to provide mental health and drug treatment, and to assist both state and local law enforcement. This does not even take into account cost savings to the criminal justice system. A dismantling of the Cole Memorandum would have the opposite effect, driving existing lawful product into the unregulated black market and funding criminal enterprise. Close quote. And of course, the Cole Memo was the document issued by the federal government in 2013, determining the priority areas that the federal government would be going after cannabis crimes, such as providing cannabis to minors, taking it across state lines, and that sort of thing. And so anyone who complied with the Cole Memo, which was supposed to be at reduced risk of federal involvement. And now, of course, Attorney General Sessions is looking at revisiting or ripping up the Cole Memo here, and that's not going to be good for anybody. Also,
just for him, it seems.
Yeah, just for him and his personal crusade. Now, as I mentioned earlier, State Police Superintendent Travis Hampton also wrote to the Attorney General, and he said, and this is coming from a top cop in the state of Oregon, this referenced report, he says, attributed to my agency is not a published report and is regrettably utilized to represent Oregon's efforts in compliance surrounding marijuana enforcement. Upon examination of early drafts, it was clear that the report was in its infancy stage and objective data would be required to supplant many of the subjective or invalidated sources. Unfortunately, the first and least defensible draft of the report was what was leaked. And so here you have both the governor and the chief of police in the state of Oregon saying that Jeff Sessions' data that he's using to question Oregon's control of legalization was valid, and these Oregon officials are saying, nope, your data is wrong. We know what we're doing here, and this would be a terrible thing. And while I'm reading part of this letter, there has also been a similar letter coming from Colorado, and so on the state levels, you have people who are saying, if the feds try to interfere, we are going to stand up to this. The Washington Attorney General said just the other day that if the feds try to come in and shut down the Washington marijuana industry, that the state is going to back up this industry, and they're going to fight in federal court against the federal government coming in and implementing these areas, which are clearly in the 9th and 10th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution, areas that fall within the purview of the state's rights.
The governor of the state of Alaska, Governor Walker, has also issued a statement saying basically, back off, leave us be. You got no business, trying to tell us how to conduct our state business here. He's one man, and hundreds of thousands of Alaskans voted for that. So
absolutely,
tens of millions of people collectively had voted for these. Hundreds of millions potentially at this point have voted for these. Voted for these policies, and it's interesting to see that one person,
I read a stat this morning that said that at this point now, 95% of the people live in states that have some form of marijuana reform, whether it's legalization or MME or decriminalization. So the country has moved on totally in this area. Moving on also,
right.
we have another story here that we mentioned a couple of weeks ago when it first broke, and that was about Roger Stone, who is well known as got his start in the Nixon White House and has been a political dirty trickster and a mentor to some people like Donald Trump and others. And so he's getting involved with a campaign to end the federal prohibition and to legalize pot. So we have a story here from Politico.com by Mark Caputo, and he says that a group of marijuana activists is calling for a boycott of a major cannabis exposition because its keynote speaker will be Roger Stone. And they don't like Roger Stone because not only is he a right-wing trickster, they say he's a racist, and they say he's stoking all these fears.
Well, that's a classic left-wing, tactic. They fucking paint anyone they don't agree with as a racist. Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that really that I agree that it's a left-wing tactic. I think every political party or every political affiliation tries to paint the other side as bad guys.
But painting people as racist because you don't agree with them is uniquely leftist these days.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'll stand by that.
That's all right. But anyway, Stone recently won praise from the cannabis activists after announcing he was going to form this nonprofit to move this. And he's doing this with the help of a Florida attorney, John Morgan. And we've mentioned Mr. Morgan previously on this show.
He's the guy who's suing the state over those
suing
regulations.
The state of Florida because they're in passing their medical marijuana law, they are not going to allow
smokable cannabis. I remember that.
John Morgan is now, not only is he suing the state of Florida to allow that, but it looks like he's very close apparently to announcing that he's going to be running for governor of Florida.
Okay.
So if you see him win that seat, then I think you'll have a much friendlier cannabis administration there.
I mean, I'd like to know what else he's running on.
Absolutely.
Other than just the cannabis thing. And besides that, okay, Roger Stone is hooking up with this lawyer and he's doing his thing to try to legalize cannabis. Is this just another play because he sees money in it? Or is he really behind it because of the right thing to do? You know what I mean? Because you see people like Vicente Fox from Mexico who was adamantly against cannabis until he got out of office and became an independent businessman. Now he's all about it, you know what I mean? Or like the cop who runs the apothecarium, narcotics officer for decades. Don't go to the apothecarium. And now he's all, I've seen the light, and just as the regulations came for medical marijuana, I magically had a realization and a family member or some bullshit. So it's just, what's this guy's real, coming from Politico, I have to take it with a grain of salt, but really I kind of like the spin because it reveals the potential motives. Is he doing this for the right reasons? Why is he there? Is he there to make money? Does he really give a shit? I would be suspicious if I was some of these people also. I'm not do you trust him? Can you?
Well, and that's part of hopefully the value that we provide in a show like this is we'll do the background research and we'll look at this from a number of different points and try to come up with the straightest dope on this and let people make their own decision and point them in the right directions. In this particular case, they're saying I'm looking for who's saying. I've got a line here saying that totally this is a Media Matters hit job against Roger Stone, and Media Matters was founded by George Soros, who is a very left-wing.
He's the guy who pays for the Antifa people to go cause trouble.
Okay, but among the other things, why I find this thing to be a little ironic is George Soros is being painted as a bad guy because he doesn't like Roger Stone, who's trying to legalize pot, and yet George Soros was the early funder for many of the medical marijuana movements in the country. I was just going to say,
hasn't he donated tens of millions of dollars to those campaigns?
And in fact, after doing extensive research on this, I was able to locate the group that in 1998 became the progenitor of the first medical marijuana initiative in Nevada, and it was George Soros money that founded that medical marijuana initiative.
And a lot of those original bills had a lot of philanthropic what's the word I'm looking for? Language. Language contained within those bills, because I feel like those donors back in the day really just wanted to see it legal and didn't really have a lot of expectation to make billions of dollars off of it in the long run. I think they could, reintroduce that, but these days nothing gets put in unless there's something in it for the person who wants it in there. There's no love in the language anymore. It's all about what can I get in exchange for my donation now. Whereas before, I give him a lot of crap, but still it's like back in the day, there was some real love put into those bills, and for good purpose.
Because it was seen at that time as criminal justice reform being a social justice issue.
Okay.
And that you want to not ruin people's lives over a plant or that sort of thing. And so at that point, it was not about making money, and it was not about developing an industry. It was just about changing the laws so you weren't locking people up over a plant. What has happened now, what is expected to be by 2020 a $40 billion industry in this country, is something that came up secondarily to what was going on here. Now, apparently, in the Cannabis Industry Journal that was reporting on this, they said that while it's great to have an ally of cannabis legalization who might have Trump's ear, we don't want Stone's help. There is no place for someone like him in the cannabis industry. And I got to just break with that immediately. I don't care who these people are, but to say, oh, the great big world of pot or the great big world of this or that or whatever, there's no place for those people.
No, I you know what? I see it the other way. I totally understand where they're coming from, is because they look at this guy's history and they're like, you've been such a burden to this industry. You've done what you can over the years to make sure that this is seen in a bad light, and now all of a sudden, because you're influential, you want to jump on the bandwagon. Well, you know what? We don't want you here. We don't need bandwagoners like you around, because we have done just fine without people like you around. And it's the same, like, for me, just to jump on his side because, oh, well, he's a Republican and we need Republicans on board, and, we need to have this bipartisan thing. How can I say that when I'm so anti-law enforcement jumping in just because of the nature of their,
right?
The nature of their career choice. Now they want to jump ship because they've seen the light, and I'm bitter about that.
A new career choice.
Well, I'm bitter because I've had negative experiences with law enforcement, so I feel like they shouldn't be involved because they're bad people, and now these people see these right-wingers as bad people, so they're taking the same stance. They're like, look, dude, thanks but no thanks. You can go do your thing over here without us. So that's you know what I mean? And where do you find that common ground? A lot of people don't want to find that common ground.
Okay, however, I've got to, going back to John Morgan here, and before
Morgan's a Democrat, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. But before researching him, and finding out about him for the show and over these months as we're talking about, I had no knowledge or experience of him before, so I don't have any preconceptions of him. But as a practical purpose, I remember earlier in the session, I found somebody was trying to get Tick Segerblum's support for something in one of the marijuana bills, and I said, Tick, this person hates you. They totally can't stand you. And Tick said, well, doesn't matter. You have to work with everybody. You have to be able to move the ball forward wherever you can. And so what's happening here is for John Morgan, who, as you point out, is a Democrat, he is supporting Roger Stone, the Republican, in this. And regardless. And he says that a boycott like this would be counterproductive. He says, and I quote, "It's a mistake. Roger has the president's ear. Politics is not pretty. Sometimes politics makes strange bedfellows," which is an old phrase.
Yeah.
And he said, this is such a time. And Morgan points out that with a stroke of the pen, Trump could make MJ Schedule 2, and it would be the right thing to do, and his ratings would soar. And he could make it 2 or 3 or deschedule completely. So
how much does he really have the president's ear these days, though? Because I've heard that tossed around a lot. Oh, this guy's close to Trump, that guy's close to Trump, or this or that. And it turns out that they're not really as close as they might have thought they were. Like Christie thought he was close. Turned out not to be so close. A lot of people, I think, have...
Steve Bannon thought he was close.
Yeah, well, he turned out not to be so close.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who think that they're in the inner circle, but really his inner circle consists of people with the last name Trump. That's
true. However, I would point out that Roger Stone and Donald Trump have an association going back the better part of 30 years. So
we'll see.
You could say someone like that would more likely have the ear of the president than
I hope you're right.
Other people who just joined more recently. But we'll see what happens there. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Crazy Terry here with your car care tip of the day. So it's not a bad idea every now and then to check your battery. If you don't know how to do it, have somebody check it for you. Just a visual inspection can tell you a lot about your battery. So as we can see here, this battery's got a hold down. It's nice and tight. The cables are on. They don't look bad. We've got a cover. We don't see any corrosion. Everything's kind of tight, looking good. A little bit of dirt, that's normal, but nothing's leaking, no real cause for alarm here. So that's a good sign. Doesn't mean it's good, but at least visually we know that it's intact. Okay, so we're looking at a battery here that shows signs of corrosion. We want to test that battery to make sure it's good. Usually when they're getting like this, there's going to be a problem, leaking some acid at the top. We ran the test and we find out it has 396 cold cranking amps, but the battery requires 650. So it's just not enough. The battery is going to go soon. Better to know now than later. Okay, so the benefits of checking the cable is because this cable's rotted out. What we'll find is this is the problem, not the battery. So it'll save you from buying a battery, still having the no start, only to find out that it's a cable. This type of corrosion is common in diesels. Okay, so we're getting ready to jump the car, but we have to have some battery cables. And we have to check those too before we hook them up to the battery. So here we have our standard set of battery cables. We just look them over, see if the ends are frayed, if everything's connected all right. Everything looks good here. Wouldn't hurt to check the rest of the cable just to make sure the dog didn't get it and chew it up. We have red and black. Red's positive, black's negative. You always want to hook the positive up first and then the negative. And I'll show you how that's done right now. Keep these off to the side so they're not touching each other. Hook up your positive. You can find that right here by the plus sign, the negative sign. Plus is positive, red. Make sure that's securely hooked up. Keeping these away from each other. Hook up your negative cable. Just got to fight it on there. Figure out a way to get it. Wiggle it a little bit so it ensures a good connection. Now you're transferring voltage. If I hit these two together, we're going to spark. Kind of want to avoid that. Won't kill you. Kind of fun. A lot of people think if they can turn the headlights on, the battery's fine. That's not always the case. It takes very little amperage to turn a light on, but it takes a lot of amperage to start the starter. I recommend checking the charging system every oil change. At Sun Valley Automotive, there's never a charge for that. This is Crazy Terry with your car care tip of the day.
And we're back with the last segment of the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. We're going to jump into a couple of healthcare stories. And the first one is about how marijuana may treat aggressive brain cancer. And this is particularly close to my heart as I've lost a good friend of mine. Remember Craig Rogers, to a very aggressive form of brain cancer. He was fishing with his brother, I believe, at the age of 30 and had a seizure and woke up and they said, congratulations, you have a stage 3 brain tumor. And that started his journey down the rabbit hole of holistic healing. And he found great relief with what are considered alternative treatments, which hopefully will become standardized treatments in the not too distant future. But we'll just get right into it. And what's being heralded as a breakthrough for cancer research, GW Pharmaceuticals recently announced positive results from a study using a combination of cannabidiol and tetrahydrocannabinol, that's CBD and THC, to treat an aggressive form of brain cancer. Can you help me with this, please?
I absolutely will.
This name?
GW Pharmaceuticals, we're already familiar with because they are the producer. They're a British-based company. They're a producer of Sativex, which is
that spray form cannabis.
Which is a spray form sativa cannabis, which is made from a whole plant extract. And so what they're doing now is they're looking at glioblastoma multiforme, which is a particularly aggressive form of brain tumor. And I know more about this subject than I really ever wanted to, because over the years when I was helping patients, I ran into at least half a dozen patients with this particular brain cancer. And it is devastating in the way that it robs people of their life. And I remember one fellow who was 60 years old, and he said, you know, everybody told me that these were going to be my golden years, and the golden years aren't so golden. And when you have something like this, it absolutely devastates your life. George Harrison's another one who died of the same, of exactly the same disease. And what that shows is that no matter how much money you have, this is something that your money cannot buy you out of it. Cannot buy you more time, particularly. So anyway, what GW is doing now is a study on not just THC, which is their Sativex, but actually combining the THC and CBD for a more synergistic effect.
That's been an argument with cannabis advocates for a long time, is that
Absolutely.
the pharmaceutical companies are honing in on these specific things like THC for the pill form that you take for appetite, Marinol,
sure.
thank you. But it doesn't really work as well. The patients report that it works kind of, and as they start to introduce these different whole plant therapies, I think they're going to make a lot more inroads with the patients.
If you're just taking the THC, what you're getting is a salad that's made up of only lettuce.
Right.
If you're just taking a CBD oil, you're having a salad that is wholly tomatoes.
Right, yeah.
And so the idea that these things work synergistically together appears to be common sense to many of us, but those in the pharmaceutical industry are looking for single substance solutions.
Do you believe that that's because of the nature of the industry as a whole that I don't fully understand, or is it because of government regulations that prevent them, or is it overly constricting and difficult to have multiple compounds within that same
Yes and maybe.
Yes and maybe.
Yes
okay.
and maybe. Basically, it's easier for these companies to come out with a single pharmacological agent, which they can then make into multiple.
Is that why there's only one active ingredient in most of these?
It's that, and it's also the fact that governmental agencies like the United States Food and Drug Administration are set up to analyze and approve single agent active compounds,
right.
And they were not set up to handle these multiple compounds. And that doesn't mean, of course, that you can't combine two into a drug, but it's not how the regulatory agencies are set up. And so it just becomes there's less of a financial incentive for these companies to go after multi-agent compounds to make them more effective. And also to the third point of your question, which is it more complex? Anytime that you're introducing multiple elements into a formula, you are necessarily making it more complex and then trying
because
to
it affects
figure
the
out
study parameters, right?
Sure, absolutely.
So, yeah, okay,
absolutely.
well, so what's the end result of all this? Sorry.
And so, no, that's all right. And in effect, really, the way that cannabinoids work on these gliomas, these brain tumors, is they use something called autophagic cell death, which is basically starving the ability of those cancer cells to latch on to a blood supply, because that is the first thing that these malignant sources go for is a food source. And so by preventing them from establishing a feeding mechanism effectively prevents the tumor from growing, and instead it shrinks down to the point where it's gone. So GW's glioma research demonstrates that THC and CBD appear to act via distinct signaling pathways. That means each one of them is working in a different mechanism within the human body. The combined administration of the two major cannabinoids led to a synergistic reduction in the viability of glioma cells compared to the administration of each cannabinoid individually. And what they mean, they're saying the synergistic reduction. That means that when both of the substances, THC and CBD, are working together in the body, then the sum becomes or the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And so the two of them together are working much more effectively. And this is something that's going to continue to go on. I know over the years that I've done this show and dealing with patients, I return to this topic time after time, because all the research that we're seeing and the research that they're doing now is essentially an outgrowth of foundational work done in 1973 at the University of Virginia. And from there to the University of Madrid, elsewhere in the world, everything that they're showing is that cannabis is effective in this. And you go online, you do your own research. It's the RSO, the Rick Simpson oil, Phoenix tears, that high potency stuff that really appears effective at reducing these tumors. And so I do come back to it because, you know, you've lost a friend to it. I've lost friends to brain cancer. And it's really about education and awareness, and the government may be acting a little slowly. Some of these various companies may not be acting quick enough, because if you or a loved one is stage 2, 3, or 4 with a brain cancer, you can't wait for them. You got to get out there and jump on this yourself. So I do like to keep people aware for this. You know, on a less fatal note, but one that is equally debilitating for people, we have an article from thefreshtoast.com by Terry Rickling that there's no known cure for arthritis, but marijuana works wonders, and boy does it. The term arthritis is actually a category that includes over 100 conditions and diseases affecting joints and surrounding tissues, and there is no known cure for any form of arthritis. However, cannabis can offer arthritis sufferers relief. After all, cannabis is known to be as much as 20 times more effective than aspirin. And when I read that in the article, I had to go to the link and look at the National Institutes of Health, which is an department of the United States government, and they're saying that despite the fact that the government is saying cannabis has no medical use, they're saying it's 20 times or up to 20 times more effective than aspirin at reducing inflammation. And it's also an effective sleep aid, which is really important for people who have arthritis.
Absolutely.
It's that recuperative time. An Israeli study found that 90% of medical marijuana patients stayed on their medicine regimen, and most reported reduced pain and function. And you know, I as a post-op cardiac patient, I have to take meds every day, and sometimes I'll forget them, or I'll skip a day. I don't do it intentionally. And a lot of people have this problem that they're supposed to take their meds, but they trail off, or this or that. So it's amazing to me that 90% of the people, when you give them pot as an alternative, they stay on their regimen.
They're not going to forget to do
They're
that.
good for it.
Yeah.
So
I had a neighbor, a biker neighbor, had nasty arthritis in his shoulder and things like that. And he was talking to me. He's like, God, you know, I don't want to smoke pot because I have all this thing of VA and da-da-da-da-da. So I gave him a CBD patch. And he slapped it on his shoulder. And he called me like 4 or 5 hours later, and he was just like, hey, man, that really worked. And I was like, well, how did you know? And he says, when I reach with my left hand for the remote control, it hurts every time because of the way the rotator works. And I was sitting there watching TV, and I reached for it, and I just changed the channel. And that's when I went, oh, what just happened there?
It didn't hurt.
So he just, he didn't even realize it at first until like he reached for it again, and he's just like, man, you know, just, you know, it's not like a psychosomatic thing or anything.
No, not at all.
It really works
because
for some
he wasn't
people.
even aware. He realized the result of the treatment.
That's right. It was just one of those things, and he's just, you know, it kind of opens people's eyes because you're like, well, it's not psychoactive. How does this work? How does it go? You know, but damn it, it works for some people. As I transition from young firebrand into old fart, I find I have lots of aches and pains, and I have arthritis. I use a cannabis-based salve externally on the arthritis, and it works, and I use it a lot, and it's amazing how much it works. So it does belie the old stereotype of people, oh, you're just smoking, you just want to get high. If you're using topicals or things like that, you're not going to get high. You're going to get relief. It's like, I always found that humorous. You know, there are these videos of these children having horrible seizures, you know, and they give them the CBD, you know, and people still have the balls. They're like, well, you're just using it to get high. It's like, dude, really? Like, you know, like there's a video of a dog that's having a seizure that's getting relief from the CBD. I think actually the dog was at our party. You can meet, and it's just like
that dog just wanted to get high. That dirty
the dog wanted to get high. It's just like the absurdity of people to ignore, you know, to suppress what's real in their own mind, to satisfy their own inner
it's crazy.
Inner ideals is just unbelievable. But
the thing is, there is a lot of there's a lot of potential here, and
hopefully less dangerous too.
One of the hidden potentials of using cannabis either internally or externally for arthritis is that you're lessening the amount of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, Advils, Tylenols, that sort of thing, because over the course of many years, those things can shred the hell out of your kidneys.
Yeah, it's bad for your innards for sure.
Medical research. So this is another less harmful alternative for that. You know, before we go, and we're just about to, but before we go, you mentioned the party real quick. How was the 9th annual weekend pool party?
As far as I'm aware, it was a great success.
Oh, okay.
I was at a concert that night.
Oh, all right. Because you mentioned this dog with our.
No, one of our volunteer coordinator, Michelle, was kind enough to organize that and get that dog and their owner out to kind of enlighten, because the dog went viral and turns out it was local, and it was a whole like educational thing. People could come out and see it for real. You know, it's not just a story on the internet. You can actually interact with the people and talk to them about what happened, how that went down.
And interacting is being good. Interacting is really good because that's where you get your knowledge. That's where you get your perspective. And we are about out of time here, but we will be back next week. Oh, did you have something to say, John?
Yeah, I attended that party.
Oh, you did? How was the
party? And I saw the dog, and it was really cool because I had donated to the dog
previously.
Yeah, and not knowing that he was going to be there, and went there, and it was like, so it was cool. So yeah, it was a great party, good turnout. So yeah, but it's nice seeing that, you have this thought about, gee, I'd like to do something nice, and you do something nice, not knowing if you're being schnookered.
Sure.
And so to go there and see the dog, and it was immediately, it was like, hey.
It's real.
Yeah.
It's not a scam.
So
how nice.
Cool. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and I've invited them down to the studio to do some shout outs and stuff like that.
Very cool.
Well, we'll have to follow up with them.
You betcha.
And we'll follow up next time with more news from Nevada and beyond about the cannabis information and the perspective you need to know.
Last thing. Sure. If there's bad things going on in Houston right now, if you have time, please call your American Red Cross, make a donation. There are lots of local organizations taking water, dog food, baby formula, all kinds of stuff. Seek them out and make it happen, because I don't know if you have friends or family down there, but it's bad. They have gotten as much rain in 5 days as we have in the last 12 years in Nevada, and that is a fact.
I read a stat that a couple of days ago, and so now it's outdated, I'm sure, that over 1 million gallons of water fell in that area for each resident in that area. I mean, you think of a 20 or 30,000 gallon swimming pool, sounds like a big pool. So 1 million gallons.
Don't pray for Houston. Donate for Houston.
and I thought it was pretty cool. Anheuser-Busch quit.
Making beer
and canning water to send down there.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I thought
the Georgia Brewery did that. They're still doing it.
If I was a beer drinker, man, I'd be drinking Anheuser-Busch.
As opposed to Best Buy down in Houston, who was selling cases of water which you could buy out here for $3 or $4.
No. But they apologized afterwards.
Yeah. After they got caught.
After they got busted, we're sorry.
Yes, it's always better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. Well, on that note, same bad time, same bad channel.
See you next time.